I never expected to see so much blood in a place that smelled like cinnamon and hay. Rowe Family Farms had been my sanctuary for 32 years, ever since my parents first swaddled me in a wheelbarrow while they replanted frost-burned pumpkins. Free-range childhood turned into a degree in horticulture, and when Mum's heart finally surrendered to a July heatwave, the farm became mine. I added cider slushies, Instagram-ready photo ops, and the legendary Moonlight Maze, a half-mile labyrinth of 10-foot corn walls lit only by mason jars and the full October moon. A harmless scare thrill, I kept telling myself, a safe scare. Then, on the maze's third night this season, Ethan Tomlin, 17, JV quarterback, serial prankster, was found sprawled at post 11 with a splintered fence picket jammed through his throat. Somebody had stapled a handful of straw to the wound, like a cruel joke that he'd been turned into a scarecrow himself. By the time Deputy Shea unzipped the body bag, the maze had emptied, the bonfire had guttered, and every pumpkin on the western ridge looked bruised and rotten. When tragedy strikes a farm attraction 2 weeks before Halloween, you don't shut the gates. You protect the scene, cooperate with law enforcement, and pray your insurance covers more than hay rides. But while the sheriff's department fingerprinted candy apple sticks and collected phone videos from shrieking teenagers, I couldn't stand still. A kid had died on my land. The killer was either a customer who'd slipped into the darkness, or, far worse, someone who knew the property as well as I did. The town papers called it the Scarecrow killing. They loved the lurid detail that Ethan's eyeballs had been stuffed with dried kernels of field corn. The articles rarely mentioned the panic attack-level guilt of the woman who'd trusted volunteer staff to keep guests safe. That woman was me. 3 nights later, under a hunter's moon, bright enough to bleach the color out of the orchard, I was supposed to be sleeping. Instead, I was adjusting the straps on Dad's old leather shoulder holster. The .38 snub nose inside was archaic, but it had put down more than one coyote. I couldn't be certain it would stop a human predator. Still, I felt better with its cold metal hug pressing between my ribs and my flannel shirt. The sheriff had stationed 2 cruisers at the farm's dirt entrance, but the acreage was too wide to fence entirely, and the maze itself was off limits while forensics reviewed. Most locals approved of the closure, except for one demographic, the same thrill-seekers who'd been daring each other to spend full-moon lock-ins inside the maze since the first year I built it. According to grainy TikTok footage, several teens had already hopped the warning tape, ignoring blood-dark stains on the path. They wanted the adrenaline of walking Ethan's last steps. I wanted the killer's face, so I made a decision: patrol the property alone, check every scarecrow I'd wired to their posts, and search for evidence while the sheriff's deputies polished donuts in their cruisers. If the murderer returned for souvenirs, the way serial offenders sometimes did, I'd meet them in the dark and hope my nerves outlasted theirs. I slid a hunting knife into my boot sheath, packed a flashlight, and locked the farmhouse behind me. Warm wind carried the dusty perfume of pulverized corn leaves. Somewhere north, my neighbor's dog yapped at passing deer. Farther east, the town's water tower glinted like a silver coin. I crossed the gravel lot, boots crunching past stacks of unsold pumpkins, toward the low fence that ringed the moonlight maze. Except tonight the moon wasn't lunar white. It was pumpkin orange, so oversized it looked closer than the distant barn roofs. Its rise painted every stalk, every shivering tassel, a fiery color reminiscent of spilled arterial blood. I shivered, cursed my imagination, and climbed the gate. Row Farm used exactly 13 scarecrows, not for superstitious reasons, but because 13 was all Dad's wagon could haul when he built the first maze. Over the years, the crude guardians became local celebrities. There was Raggedy Randall with his plaid shirt and dangling button eye, Wendy Wheatstalk sporting a sun-bleached bonnet, Hobbled Henry missing a stuffy left leg, leaving straw guts drooping. Families posed with them, kids tossed popcorn at them, and on more than one moonless night, teenagers borrowed them for romantic campfires in the orchard. Tonight, the scarecrows looked different. Maybe because I was alone. Maybe because one had apparently killed Ethan Tomlin. I started with the outer ring. One by one, I tugged wrists, wiggled heads, checked the nylon cable ties that kept each makeshift sentinel lashed to its crossbar. Nothing loose, nothing missing. I noted the way moonlight painted furrows into burlap faces, thinning them into skulls. I found myself glancing at their straw-stuffed throats, remembering Ethan gagging on fence pickets. I pulled my eyes away. Post 9 was Randall's station. He stood where two paths forked, left to an enclosed loop called Lover's Lane, right to the long walkway out. Small LED pumpkins had been strung overhead for ambience, but the sheriff's office cut power to them after the crime, so I had to rely on the moon and my flashlight. I clicked the beam along Randall's sewn-on grin. The grin widened. I jerked backward, tripped over my own boots, and fell butt first in the dirt. My flashlight clattered. When I yanked its beam up, Randall's mouth appeared normal, stitches intact. The stuffed arms hung lifeless. I told myself nerves can create illusions. Terror edits your sense of time so that a twig snap is a footstep, a shift in the breeze is a monster shrugging. Still, I drew the revolver and climbed back to my feet. Keep moving, Cam. Between posts 9 and 10, the maze narrowed. Corn brushed my shoulders. My light caught a scrap of cloth on the ground, deep navy, like part of a letter jacket sleeve. Deputy Shea's team must have missed it. I bent, pinched the fabric between gloved fingers, and pocketed it for evidence. When I reached post 10, Wendy Wheatstalk wasn't alone. Someone stood beside her. Same height, same stiff posture, but this shape had no crossbeam, no wooden spine. It wore Ethan Tomlin's varsity jacket. The letter H for Harveston gleamed in a pool of moonlight. I raised the revolver. Hands where I can see them. The scarecrow shape twisted its head. Burlap face. Hollow black stitches for eyes. Then it bolted into the corn, jointed limbs clattering, straw flinging like sparks from a bonfire. Bang. The shot cracked through the maze. Corn shredded behind the running figure. If it was running, I still couldn't accept that straw could sprint. I aimed for the legs in case there was a person inside. My second shot missed. The killer veered left, crashed through a fresher patch, and vanished. I gave chase. Leaves slashed my cheeks. Dirt kicked up beneath my boots. The maze's design flooded my memory. Post 10 bordered the interior courtyard, where we staged the nightly Pumpkin King show. No exit from there except a hidden service panel. If I could corner him before he reached it. A burst of rustling ahead. Then silence. I broke past a final row of corn into a clearing ringed by hay bales. At its centre loomed a 15-foot effigy, wooden skeleton draped in vines, crowned with a papier-mâché gourd the size of a truck tire, teeth carved into jagged triangles. The Pumpkin King, a fairy tale demon for parents to Instagram. Tonight it towered like real folklore, ancient, spiteful, hungry. The running scarecrow was gone. I spun in circles, gun raised. Shadows pranced in the lantern glow leaking over the courtyard wall from the deputies' cruisers on the far side of the farm. My breathing sounded louder than the crickets. Then something clucked above me. I snapped my head up. Perched on the Pumpkin King's wooden ribcage, balanced like a raven, was the burlap masked killer. Arms stretched scapegoat wide, straw tips fluttering. Reflex lifted my pistol, but I froze. If I fired, the rounds might ricochet off the metal screws and kill me. The thing spoke, a hiss layered over a child's giggle. Tick-tock, little farmer. Straw for bone, knife for stone. Build a doll, break a boy. My spine iced. Come down, now. My voice cracked, less sheriff's deputy and more terrified farm girl. In reply, the figure leapt, actually leapt, landing cat-like 6 feet from me. The varsity jacket didn't fit its impossible angles, sleeves stuffed to make arms seem longer. I saw 2 ragged holes in the jacket's back where straw spines poked through. The Scarecrow circled. It clutched a harvest scythe, curved wooden handle, blade honed for decorative displays, but still steel enough to slice. Straw for bone, knife for stone. Build a doll, break a boy. That nursery rhyme wasn't local. My dad used to whisper half of it when he drank. My mum would hush him, say the words brought bad luck. I hadn't heard them in 20 years. How do you know that? I asked. The Scarecrow cocked its head. Moonlight reflected in something glassy behind the burlap eye holes. Human eyes. Very human. Come closer, Camilla. My name. Hearing it stripped away the final layer of denial. Whoever stood inside the costume knew me personally. That left maybe 15 suspects, staff, family friends, ex-employees. Only one of those had an old injury that forced him to tilt his head just like that. Lyle? I whispered. Lyle Benson had been my dad's most loyal farmhand. After Dad's tractor accident, I kept Lyle on payroll even when his rheumatoid arthritis grew too severe for heavy labor. He mostly stitched scarecrows, carved jack-o'-lanterns, and told campfire stories to keep waiting guests amused. He also, apparently, murdered teenagers. I tightened my grip on the gun. Take off the mask. You won't like what you see. I already don't. Silence, except for corn rattling like bones in a chest cavity. Then Lyle's shoulders heaved. He tugged the burlap hood free. Underneath, his face was a map of fresh cuts, like he'd tried stapling straw to his own skin. Wheat shafts protruded from adhesive patches on his cheeks and chin. His beard had been shaved unevenly, leaving crop circles of hair. But his eyes, those gentle hazel eyes that once watered tomatoes beside my mum, were glassy with something colder than hate. Killed him with my harvest king, Lyle said softly. Was only a prank, you thought. Only a jump scare. But pranks teach cruelty. They laughed at me after the closing shift. Stuffed straw in my pockets, told me I was too slow, too old, made me a scarecrow. The Tomlin boy led it. I remembered that night, last season's harvest haunt. Teen employees snuck beer, made Lyle the punchline. I fired 2 of them, but Ethan begged forgiveness. I told Lyle the farm was his home, safe. Perhaps I'd never convinced him. Ethan was a stupid kid, I admitted, but he didn't deserve death. Kids grow into monsters, Lyle rasped. Break them young, or they break you old. He lunged. The scythe whooshed where my neck had been a half-second earlier. I dropped and rolled, firing twice. 1 bullet sparked off the curved blade. The second punched into Lyle's thigh. A straw plume erupted with blood droplets glittering. He howled, staggered, then chased me as I bolted for the maintenance door on the maze's east side. If I could reach the tractor shed, I'd have cover, Maybe a chance to phone Deputy Shea. But the corn rows twisted, designed to confuse. Footsteps thudded behind me, slower but relentless. Lyle's breathing sounded like a bellows feeding a forge. I tore through an opening and collided with a chain-link gate, locked. Cursing, I spun around just in time to parry the scythe with my flashlight. Metal rang, sparks flew. The impact knocked my revolver loose, sending it skidding into shadows. Lyle raised the scythe for a killing stroke. Desperate, I grabbed the only weapon in reach, a half-rotted jack-o'-lantern left by maintenance crews, swung it like a shot put, and smashed his temple. Orange pulp burst across burlap fibers. Lyle fell backward, scythe embedding in the dirt. I dove past him, found my revolver, then sprinted. A right turn, a left, another right. Corn slapped my shoulders like hands dragging me into nightmares. Behind, Lyle snarled words I couldn't translate. I crashed through a break in the stalks, the southern clearing bordering the pond. Fireflies glittered over algae-scummed water. Moonlight silvered the rusty rowboat Dad once used to fetch runaway pumpkins that rolled downhill. I risked a glance back. No sign of Lyle. Heart hammering, I tucked the pistol into my belt, then tipped the rowboat, sending decades' worth of rainwater gushing. Inside lay an oar, a length of frayed rope, and Dad's old pitchfork, tines pitted but razor-keen from my nightly sharpening ritual. I grabbed it. If Lyle wanted a tool of the harvest, I'd answer in kind. The maze entrance wasn't far. Blue cruiser lights flashed beyond the ridge, bouncing off corn tops. I opened my mouth to shout for help. Lyle exploded out of the corn. He'd discarded the scythe, opting for a hay-baling hook, shorter, faster. Blood soaked his jean leg. Straw stuck to the wound like feathers. We circled, predator mirroring prey, roles blurring. "I tended this land before your father's father," he rasped. "I am its Scarecrow now. You're a murderer, only scaring them straight." He lunged. I sidestepped, parrying with the pitchfork. Metal kissed metal. Our faces came inches apart. His breath smelled of fertilizer and cider. I drove my boot into his injured thigh. He screamed, stumbled. I could have ended it there, but I hesitated, seeing the man who taught me to braid wheat crowns when I was 6. That pause cost me. Lyle swung the hook, grazing my arm. Hot pain lanced, blood-soaked plaid. Enough. I feinted left, then jabbed straight. The pitchfork's center tine pierced the varsity H, slid between ribs, and anchored in his chest. Lyle froze. Straw and blood bubbled from his lips. His bailing hook dropped. For a moment we simply breathed together, farmer and fallen worker, autumn air between us. Moonlight framed the tableau, a woman skewering a scarecrow. Lyle's knees folded. I guided him to the ground, easing the pitchfork free. He shuddered once, head turning to stare at the sky's bruised orange lantern. Then his eyes emptied. Sirens wailed closer. Corn parted as Deputy Shea and 2 officers barreled through, pistols raised. I lowered the bloody pitchfork and let adrenaline deflate, leaving my limbs hollow. "It's over," I said. 2 weeks later, Harveston voted to reopen Rowe Farm for daylight business only. No maze, no night haunts. Insurance premiums tripled. Reporters camped at the gate, hoping for a weeping statement. I ignored them, focusing on salvage, composting ruined pumpkins, bleaching bloodstains from concrete, erecting a cedar bench over the place where Ethan died. His parents came each dawn to leave sunflowers. I suffered nightmares. Scarecrow armies, straw slithering through keyholes, Lyle's whispered rhyme. Therapy sessions weren't enough. but tending soil proved medicinal. Before winter freeze, I planted a row of heritage white pumpkins in the courtyard. Come spring, new life would climb the same dirt watered by spilled blood. On the final evening of the season, I stood alone at the center of the deconstructed maze. Cornstalks had been mulched, scarecrows stored in the loft, or so I believed. When moonrise burned the horizon, I glanced toward post 9. There, nailed to the crossbeam where Randall once hung, stood a fresh scarecrow, its burlap face stitched in crimson thread, its arms outstretched, not in threat, but in greeting. No footprints in the tilled earth led to or from it. Wind rustled straw fingers. The scarecrow's head tilted, exactly the way Lyle's injured neck once required. A gust carried a faint hiss. Tick-tock, little farmer. My pulse thudded. I stepped forward, hand brushing the holstered revolver I still wore even in daylight. Then I remembered something Dad used to say. Land never forgets. It keeps our stories good and bad in its roots. I exhaled, nodded to the sentinel. Guard them well, I whispered, to Lyle, to the farm, to whatever spirits claimed October nights. Then I turned, walked back towards the farmhouse lights, and left the scarecrow to its watch beneath the harvest moon.